crazy to think about, but we're all one mistake away from getting fired. I know this might sound like clickbait, but think about it. If you went into the office tomorrow and you punched your boss in the face, there's a good chance that you're going to get escorted out of the building by lunchtime. Now, I'm sure most of you guys would never do this, but 49 out of the 50 states in the United States follow what's called at-will employment. What this means is that an employer can terminate an employee at any time for any reason without warning, as long as the reason itself is not illegal. The only state that doesn't follow this is Montana, for whatever reason. This just goes to show you how easy it is for someone to get fired. I don't want to scare you, and we certainly don't want that. So today, we're going to talk about 3 common mistakes and pitfalls that I see a lot of people making in the workplace and how you can avoid them. My name is Paul. I talk about career and professional development in an easy and achievable way for busy professionals. Let's get into it. Not asking enough questions. It's funny because the people that should be asking the most questions tend to be the people who actually ask the least amount of questions. When I was in high school, I got an internship at a wealth management company. And to be honest, the only reason I picked that company was because it was walkable from my house. I didn't have a car. And frankly, I thought it was just the most convenient option. One of my first days there, the managing director pulled me aside, welcomed me to the firm, and asked me what I knew about finance. I had no knowledge of finance, and so I probably made up some stupid answer. And so he started quizzing me. Did I know what a mutual fund was? Do I know anything about stock? What are some things that I'm interested in learning and why? And I had no answer to any of those questions. It's such a shame because given that opportunity, if I had just done a little bit of homework, I could have probably went back to him, asked him a whole bunch of stuff, and it would have been such a great learning experience and opportunity for me. But for whatever reason, I figured I didn't need to do that. Maybe it was because I was nervous, I was too scared, I didn't know where to start. But regardless, that's a mistake that still sticks with me today. I've been working in my industry for a while now. I've worked in consulting, tech, project management, all sorts of different jobs. And the one key indicator of success that I see across the board, no matter what industry you're in, no matter how much experience you might have, is if you ask questions and you're someone who's curious, that's generally a good sign, an indicator that this person's going to have longevity and success down the line. When I was in the consulting space, there was a term that was referenced a lot, and it was called get smart fast. What this basically means is tomorrow they might send me to a client who is working in medical devices. I have no background in medical devices. I majored in history and journalism when I was in college, and so I would have to figure out how to speak the language. What are some of the questions that I would need to ask? What does medical devices even mean? Basically, what are the things that I need to do today so that tomorrow I don't look like a fool? You might learn how to do research, you might learn how to read things and skim things really quickly, but at the end of the day, the key is to ask good questions when you get there. It's funny because I think a lot of people think that asking questions makes you look like you don't know something, that you might be incompetent or whatever the reason, but it actually does the opposite. If you're new to a company, new to an industry, everyone there already knows that you're probably starting fresh. People know that you probably don't have a clue as to what you're doing. Think about it this way. If at your job tomorrow somebody started new, would you expect them to be able to speak the same language, to know all the systems, to know everything? That would be unreasonable. Sure, if you're constantly asking questions, some people might get annoyed, but they're not going to get upset. People only get upset when you make avoidable mistakes because you didn't ask the questions. Don't be afraid to speak up. What I like to do is keep a running list of questions so I don't have to keep going back and forth to somebody to ask one by one. But maybe at the end of the day, I can schedule a quick 15-20 minutes, get their thoughts, ask a bunch of questions, and turn it into a conversation. You should also remain curious. As you're looking around and doing research and onboarding and just learning stuff in general, don't be afraid to dive into a topic, go down a couple rabbit holes to really show that you're interested in this topic or this job or whatever the case might be. As you get better and better at this, what you don't want to do is just ask the basic surface level questions and then leave it at that. You want your questions to reflect the fact that you've done research, that you've done and put in some work. And so you want to go even a layer below that, and that shows that you're able to ask informed questions. Plus, even if you're an introvert, it has the added benefit of getting to meet and talk to a lot of people. And sure, it might feel uncomfortable, but in the long run, getting to know the people that you work with and develop these relationships is only going to benefit you. Number 2, making assumptions. Unless you're talking about yourself, you don't really know the full story about anyone or anyone's circumstances. Maybe someone's not nice to you, or or they bumped into you in a weird way. It doesn't mean that they hate you or they dislike you. Maybe they're having a bad day or they're stressed or distracted, or there's a million other reasons for that person to not have been the nicest to you in that particular moment. For instance, I didn't realize I have a pretty bad case of RBF. When I'm working and concentrating, I look really serious and angry, but usually it's just because I'm concentrating on what I'm working on. And so someone actually told me that they were intimidated to speak to me and ask a question because I look so intense. But honestly, if that person had walked up to my desk to ask a question, I would have gladly answered it. There's other types of assumptions that you should be making. For instance, if you send an email, don't assume that the person's going to read that email. One of my pet peeves is when I ask someone on my team, hey, did you follow up with that person? And they say, oh yeah, I sent them an email. I sent it like a week ago and they never responded. Well, did you go up to them? Did you Slack them or message them or talk to them at their desk? The answer that I almost always receive is no. I didn't realize this, but according to a 2022 study, people on average spend less than 9 seconds reading an email. There's a good chance that they either ignored yours completely or briefly skimmed through it and totally forgot about it. Other examples like this is never assume someone is aware of your deadlines at any given time. You might have mentioned it in a meeting, maybe you'll even thrown into an email and highlight it, but nobody cares about your deadlines as much as you do. You can't expect people to be taking super meticulous notes at all times. And so, yes, it might be their responsibility to get a certain thing done, but it's your responsibility to ensure that everyone is familiar and aware of whatever deadlines that you might be imposing on them. This list can honestly go on and on and on. There's so many examples of things that you shouldn't be assuming in an office and work environment. But basically, I think the moral of the story here is that you need to be a paranoid maniac. Okay, fine. Maybe not a paranoid maniac. When you're working, you need to always CYA. Cover your make sure that details are confirmed and documented. Always double check and ensure that you're leaving a paper trail. That basically means send it in an email, write it down in a memo that's easily trackable, put it in a ticket, somewhere where you can always go back and confirm that that information has been shared already. When people told me this in the past, I thought it came off manipulative, right? Like, why are you double checking and why are you being so paranoid about everything? There's no reason to go through all these lengths unless you're doing something weird or wrong, right? That's not always the case. As you get more and more responsibilities, you're inherently going to have more things that you need to worry about and keep track of. Good documentation and good note-taking and organization is only going to benefit you and be good for you as well as all your team members in the long run. If you ever need to go back to track information, or say you're working on a similar project in the future and you want to go back to see some of the steps that you took on your previous project, this will allow you to go back and have meticulous notes and all the steps that you might have taken before, and it saves you a lot of work today. Anyway, so never assume. The only assuming that you should do is assume for the best and assume for the good, but always cover your back. At a lot of 3-letter federal agencies, they have a saying that they use: trust but verify. Third, not prioritizing your tasks correctly. How often has this happened to you? Your manager stops by your desk, drops his last-minute deadline on top of your plate when you have a million other things going on. What are you supposed to do? Well, the answer is you prioritize. Prioritization means that you're working on the most important thing at any given time. The single tool that I personally like to use and that I use almost every single day is a really common tool that you might have heard of. Now, let's take a look at the Eisenhower matrix. So the first step before we even jump into the Eisenhower matrix is to list out all the tasks that you need to complete and have a general understanding of roughly by when. Now let's take a look at that list and identify anything that is neither urgent nor important. What you can do with those items is just delete them completely. These are primarily just going to be distractions for you, and so by keeping them on your list, it's taking up a lot of cognitive load, and these are things that you don't need to focus your time and effort on right now. If these are potentially important tasks down the line that may become important or urgent, put them in a backlog. We can refer to them later, but for now, let's just take these and remove these from the list altogether. Next, do you have any tasks that are important but not urgent? For these, you can schedule them for later. These are the tasks that you'll get to, but just not right now. What I like to do is actually take a look at my calendar, maybe it's a week or 2 weeks in advance, and then block off time on my calendar in the future that's flexible, but as a reminder for myself that this is a work block to take care of certain tasks that maybe will become urgent down the line. Now, there's going to be tasks that are urgent but not important. Basically, these are tasks that might not require your particular set of skills. So what you can do is take a look around and see if you can delegate these to others. Do you have someone on your team that might have a little bandwidth? Is there a favor that you can call in? Or maybe there's like an intern or somebody who potentially step in and take care of these tasks for you. An example might be transcribing notes or typing up meeting minutes that you already have jotted down and then sending those out. But either way, these are things that might need to get done, but maybe it's just not you that needs to get it done. And then lastly, take a look at whatever is remaining and left over. These are going to be your important and urgent tasks. This is what you should be focusing and spending the most of your time on. Something that I like to say is that most work is good work, but not all of this work is actually great work. And to maximize our output, we should only be spending and focusing our time on this great work. What that means is if someone has an idea for a project or a task that they want to complete, almost 100% of the time in a vacuum, this is a good idea. But since we only have a limited amount of time in the day and a limited amount of bandwidth and brain power, we need to be able to measure that up against all the other good ideas that we have. So we have to select the top ideas from this list and dedicate the full amount of energy only on those particular ideas, or else we're spending time doing things that aren't going to provide as much value or ROI at the end of the day. We covered a lot today, but if you follow these ideas and steps, it's going to allow you to set yourself apart from many of your peers. And remember, at the end of the day, none of us is perfect. We're all going to make mistakes, but what's important is not that you don't make mistakes ever, because that's impossible, but when you do make mistakes, that you learn from them and that you continue to grow from them, and that you own the fact that you made a mistake in the first place. The more you try to hide and sweep it under the rug, it's going to do the opposite and eventually turn into something that's a lot more dramatic and hurtful than if you just owned up to it from the beginning and addressed it. So, with that said, what questions do you have? Do you have any other tips that you want to add? Is there something that I might have missed? Anything that you don't particularly agree with? Like, subscribe, leave a comment below, and let me know. And as always, be kind and do good. See you all next time.